Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:08 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, July 31st, and if you can't tell, I'm extremely excited because this is the first NFL breakdown of the season. I get it, it's just a Hall of Fame game, but come on, we're all degenerates. We've been waiting 6 months for the NFL to showdown slate with $20,000 to first, and it's really hard to find information on this. I've spent hours researching this, and I think we have sort of some edges to share with you guys. Before we get into all of that, today's video is brought to you by Fantasy Bros. I'm very excited to talk about Fantasy Bros. I usually don't talk about ads on here or third-party ads that often because I like to find some really good companies, and I think this one is not only fun, but actually helps your fantasy league, makes it more enjoyable. They provide fantasy content, or they provide fantasy products for your fantasy league. What they did was they sent me a package, my draft kit. I got a couple of things. I got a penalty flag. I got these names. So you get the draft board, right? You put the draft board on the wall, and then when players are picked, you put the team name with all of these, right? Every sticker for every single player. They got it all in there, pages of it, even the third strings, just to make sure if anybody gets injured during the season. I also got this sash, which I thought was really funny. You might not be able to read the whole thing, but it says, "I suck at fantasy football for your last place person." They have all these packages, right? They have trophies for your league. It's really cool. I haven't seen anything like it yet, but I recommend it a ton. There's going to be a discount code down below. I don't know exactly what the word is yet. They were saying they were going to make it my name, so potentially Sal, but whatever it is, it'll be linked down below. You can go over to fantasybros.com. You can get your draft kit. You can get a trophy. You can get those items individualized. They have a yellow penalty flag. You throw it. All that stuff is down below on fantasypros.shop.com. You go over there, you'll have a discount code. I'll make sure to put in the description. That just says that I sent you. It helps me out, but it also gives you a 10-15% discount on this. I definitely recommend it. Like it is worth I think it's $40 if you got 10 guys in your league. It's $4 each, and you get a cool board and all this other cool stuff. So I recommend it. Other than that, I'm going to be giving away a free draft kit from them. They provided us with a free draft kit for our viewers, which was something else that I really enjoyed, and giving you guys free stuff, right? So comment down below right now when you're watching this video. This is going to end by tomorrow night, by the time the games kick off. Who do you think is going to be the highest scoring player on the slate? The highest scoring player on the slate, and now keep in mind, if you pick somebody who's popular, we're just going to spin a wheel, so maybe you get a little bit different there. If you do that, they'll send you a free draft kit, a value of $40 for you and your league. Again, it comes with the draft board. You hang it on the wall, all the names. So if I first pick Saquon Barkley overall, right? Maybe I do that. They put Saquon there, and then it goes down. You can see it all right there. They got some other things in there, like the penalty flag, the stash. It's really, really cool. I highly recommend it. So yeah, this video is brought to you today by Fantasy Bros. Getting into it, I also have a course down below for the NFL. It's going to be coming out in about 10 days. You can sign up down below just to show that you're interested. It's just an email opt-in. It says, "Sal, when the course is ready, email me, let me know, because then I'll debate on buying it or looking into it then." So you can sign up for that free down below. But yeah, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, MLB, and WNBA. We had the third video out right now. I'm very excited because I did a lot of research on this, more so than I probably should have for a Showdown Hall of Fame game. But I think it's going to be really helpful for everybody tuning in and watching this. So I think we should get right into it. If you're new here, it's the NFL. Maybe you were watching me last year. Now you're back. Welcome back. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe. This channel is growing at a great rate this year, and I just want to continue to reach as many people as possible. Join the community, totally free. Getting into the video, all the plugs out of the way. I'm sorry for all those plugs. Lots of things to talk about for the NFL. But yeah, let's get into it. I have notes written down right here, so I might look over a couple times for both the Falcons and the Broncos. There's a lot of things that both of these teams are looking into for their preseason. They get this extra preseason game, right? The Hall of Fame game adds on. You get a 5th preseason game. And there's a lot of things that these teams are looking into. We can start with Denver, and then we'll go over to Atlanta, and I'll talk about my fantasy interests. I think I have a decent amount written down. Yeah, I got about 10 or 11 written down that I think are going to be viable plays today. If we start with Denver today, the biggest news there is for their quarterbacks, right? They drafted Drew Lock. He's supposed to be this backup quarterback. He was listed as the 3rd string on their unofficial, but somewhat official, I guess, depth chart. That's out. I have that up in another browser. We can open that up in a second. But yeah, pretty much Kevin Hogan is going to be the backup. He's been taking a lot of the, for now, right? He's been taking a lot of the 2nd string snaps behind Joe Flacco. Hogan is going to start this game, and then Lock's coming in, so technically Lock is the 3rd string, and then the final string after that is going to be Brett Rypien. So all three of these guys are going to get time, they said. I have the most interest in the guy that they drafted, right? I have the most interest in Lock. So Kevin Hogan, serviceable backup, right, in the league. He's a guy who can run. He played with the Browns, had a couple of good fantasy performances a few years back. I have some interest there because the guy's going to be starting, but he seems more like he's going to come out and start the first quarter of this thing. The rookie that you want to see more out of is going to play the 2nd and the 3rd, and then you put in that backup for the final quarter. So we've seen that a lot. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, oh, Lock's the 3rd string. This is very worrisome. No, it's not. It's a preseason game where there's a veteran in front of you. As much as you want to call Kevin Hogan a veteran, if he's serviceable or not, he's still a veteran. So I think Locke sees the far majority of the snaps at quarterback in this game. Look, quarterback for fantasy is never the greatest thing in the world, but it is in terms of not only having a half a quarter compared to a wide receiver. A wide receiver catches a 10-yard touchdown pass, and they're probably going to outscore most quarterbacks in a preseason game. But if we're looking for guys with opportunity, more time on the field, and that are actually skilled, and if he's going to come in the second or third quarter against backups and third strings, and he's a very talented quarterback, right? It was a draft pick out of college. And yeah, Locke's probably going to be my first interest. That is the quarterback situation for Denver. All three of them are getting time, they said. But yeah, another thing to point out is that every single player is priced at $7,600 on this slate, something that I've not seen DraftKings do for a showdown slate yet. Makes sense. You don't really know who's going to be playing where, but what it does allow you to do is it allows you to build unique lineups, number one, and really get whoever you want in there. There's no need to worry about salary cap. What you do, and everybody is 7,600, is you play whoever you want. You don't have to worry about salary cap. Everybody fits into a spot. So I think that that's interesting. So what that tells me, and it's another strategy for you if you're playing Showdown for the first time, or if you're listening to me for a while, you know this is going to sound like a broken record, but leave money on the table. On a slate like this, I'm going to tell you players that I think are viable. Maybe not all of them score, right? There's not a big sample. It's an exhibition game. These are guys that we don't even know if they'll be in the NFL, the far majority of them, come a month from now, right? So I think that all you do is your research. You see how they're looking in practices. You see who's going to at least project to have the most time on the field, and you play them. If that means you're leaving $3,000 on the table today, I don't care. Leave the $3,000. If that means you're leaving $500, $600, that's fine, leave it. There's going to be a lot of people entering lineups. The only way for you to naturally get different is to leave money on the table, because a lot of people are going to see, oh, I have $1,700 left. What can I do? But at the end of the day, as I'm saying this, the amount of money that's going to be left on the table will be the same for everybody. I literally just realized that because everybody's priced at $7,600. But anyways, nonetheless, for showdown slates in the future, especially when they're $250,000 to first on Monday Night Footballs, I cannot wait for that a month from now. Leaving money on the table is the most optimal way to go, in my opinion, if you actually want a chance at banking first place by yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to share it with a bunch of other people. So yeah, don't worry about leaving money on the table for this slate, because you're naturally going to leave the same amount. Let's just type in a bunch of players really quickly to see what it would be. You're naturally going to leave $600 on the table because every single player is priced the same. So you and everybody else will. So don't worry about it. Never mind. But just take that for note, grain of salt moving forward. So yeah, that's the Denver quarterback situation. If we move over to wide receiver, there's a lot going on at wide receiver. I don't expect to see the Cortland Suttons, the Deshaun Hamiltons, and the Emmanuel Sanders out there that often. But there's a couple of rookie standouts in camp right now. Just taking the notes right now, Kelvin McKnight and Trinity Benson are the rookie standouts that have a really good chance of making this team, because there's not a lot of depth on this team, right? They didn't really go out there and replace, for the most part. They have Tim Patrick, I guess, as a backup to a Cortland Sutton, but they never really placed a Demaryius Thomas. Sutton's supposed to take over that role. Tim Patrick's the backup for him on the outside, and you have Sanders and Hamilton, who was very serviceable to the end of last year in the slots. But in terms of third string depth and even some special teams work and fourth string depth of wide receiver, it's really wide open. Now these rookie standouts have been looking really good. I think Trinity Benson is definitely in play. I think Kelvin McKnight is definitely in play. These are guys that are potentially going to be on the field when Jake Locke is throwing the ball, which is the guy that I want throwing them the ball. Something to note, though, is that they, on this unofficial depth chart, were not listed as these top guys. Fred Brown was listed ahead of both Kelvin McKnight and Trinity Benson, which makes sense. They're younger players, but Fred Brown was listed ahead of them on the unofficial depth chart. So in terms of wide receivers today for Denver, so my interests right now are Jake Locke. I think that Trinity Benson, Kelvin McKnight makes sense. They are the more electric players that should be getting the ball from Locke, and they're going to be the most motivated because they do have a real shot at making the team right now as rookies. Not only that, but I think I also think that Fred Brown is going to be a decent play, since he is listed unofficially on the depth chart ahead of those guys, which right now, this unofficial depth chart, I'm just going to say is an official depth chart for the preseason that the Broncos released, because so far everything that they're saying in terms of their offensive linemen, some of the defensive players, and the quarterback spots have been sort of listed properly for what's to be expected in this game. So I'm going to do the same for the wide receivers. So yeah, Fred Brown becomes an interesting play to me. Somebody that many people won't even know who the name is on many of these guys, but he's not this electric rookie, but he is listed ahead of those guys. So those three wide receivers are interesting to me. At running back, there's not a ton that I'm interested in. You're probably not going to see a Philip Lindsay, who was listed as a number one running back, and Royce Freeman, who was listed as the number two on the unofficial depth chart. I do think Devontae Booker, who was listed number three, should see a decent amount of run, potentially sees 8 to 10 carries in this one, and he is a good player who's going to be going up against backup players, which he's an NFL quality player. There's a stretch of like 6 weeks or so where Devontae Booker was the starter for this Broncos team 2 years ago, and he played pretty well. He's a guy who can catch the ball as well, which is always something that you want on DraftKings PPR format. So Devontae Booker, who knows how long he stays out there for. It could be 5 carries, it could be 10 carries. I do have interest in him. Outside of that, no other interest in the running backs for this Denver team. Some other things that Denver is looking at, though, it's going to be their offensive coordinator's first game ever calling plays at the NFL level. I get it. It's an exhibition game. It's like the preseason to the preseason with this Hall of Fame game, but it's something to look at moving forward just to see how he utilizes some pieces out there, potentially utilizes those rookies as well, gadget-type plays, whatever it might be for this offense moving forward. I think that tight end could be interesting today for both sides. Tight ends for these younger QBs, they're not playing top-ranked offenses, right? But they still are going to go out there and play some decent, or top-ranked defenses, but they still are going to go out there and play some decent guys. Jake Butt is still going to miss some time after missing all of last year with an ACL, signed the Charmin deal or whatever it was, because the last name was Butt, yeah, funny. But he's listed right now as the tight end 4. I don't expect that to stay the same once he is fully healthy. But Jeff Heuerman's a serviceable tight end. I think that he is a fine play. Again, these younger players, if it's a Jake Locke, if it's even a Kevin Hogan, being somewhat young, but a Jake Locke and then third string, I think that these guys are going to look intermediate a lot of the times, get their safe checkdowns, pad the stats, No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think Heuerman, I think Noah Fant, both these guys, Noah Fant, not as much for me, but Heuerman, definitely guys who can see 4 or 5 targets today, which is not something I could say for a lot of the wide receivers, since you're going to see a ton of wide receivers spreading the wealth. So for the Denver side, for fantasy purposes, love Jake Locke. He's probably going to be in many of my lineups. I think for wide receiver, Fred Brown is very dark horse. We don't know what to expect from him. But Trinity Benson and Kelvin McKnight are guys who have take the top off of defenses, gadget type plays, electric stuff. They're standing out in practice. Potential 50-yard touchdown, potential touchdown guys who can make it in your captain spot and do really well. Devontae Booker is the only running back I touch. I think he's a very good player who should get more run because he's not as valuable as a Horace Freeman or definitely Philip Lindsay to this backfield. Outside of that, I really can't recommend any of the running backs for 4th, 5th, 6th string. They'll get some time, but for the most part, none of them have been really separated in their practices, so you don't really know who's going to get the most run. If they are all just going to split 5 carries, probably there's going to be one backup running back, 3rd, 4th, 5th string, that's going to get like 15 carries and score like 15 fantasy points, something crazy, just because they have more opportunities later in the game. Honestly, that's just pure luck at that point. We have no scouting reports on any of these guys in practice out of everything I've looked at. So that's where I'm at. And then, yeah, tight end you can take a flyer on. I'm not as pumped about tight end because I think there's other pieces, wide receiver, quarterback, some running backs that I'd rather go for. But Heuerman, no Fant, they're decent options if you want to get there. I don't think they're as valuable, though. I think they're overpriced if we start talking about tight ends in a showdown game at $7,600 instead of some of the wide receivers who are going to stretch the field more, and obviously the quarterbacks who are going to have more pass attempts and opportunities for touchdowns. So that's Denver. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that clears some things up. Let's go over to Atlanta. We'll filter by Atlanta. Don't expect to see any of the stars for Atlanta. Julio Jones already said he's sitting out the entire preseason. There's no way Matt Ryan's touching the field. There's no way injury-prone Devontae Booker. Calvin Ridley's probably not touching the field. Maybe Sanu touches the field. Maybe Austin Hooper touches the field. But nothing on offense is going to touch the field today. Some other things is Allen Bailey. This is not going to impact fantasy too much, but Dan Quinn wants to see what Allen Bailey is. They picked him up. He's a run stopper. He's probably going to get a lot of time today to see what he can do. Dan Quinn is going to use different pass rush packages. Maybe not all of them in this game, right? Probably not going to have Vic Beasley and those guys out there, but he's going to use different pass rush packages he's testing out in the preseason as he's now the sole defensive coordinator out there. But there's a couple of things for Atlanta, not as much. I mean, if you look at the news right now, there's a ton of news coming out of Broncos camp. They've already released an unofficial depth chart. They've already named their starters and who's going to be playing it in terms of the quarterback position. The Falcons have not said anything. The only dirt that I could dig up, is what I'm going to tell you, is that not the starters are not playing. But then, outside of that, this is what Quinn had to say about Kirk Benkerts. He said that he's going to get a lot of run. That's pretty good, right? That's better than nothing. He's going to get a lot of run. We've put 13 months into him. Let's see where we're at with that. So the backup quarterback should see a good amount of run. What I see there is at least 2 quarters, similar to the Jake Locke situation. So I have interest in Benkert. I have interest in Jake Locke, the 2 guys that one Locke kind of drafted for the future there in Denver. Potentially, we'll see if they can get one right there with Elway, and then Ken Burkhardt. I keep saying Ken, his name is Kirk Burkhardt, my bad. Hopefully you're not watching this, you're not. But yeah, Ken Burkhardt is $7,600. Again, same price as every single player on here, but backup quarterback should see multiple or a decent amount of time here. And that's like the main piece of Atlanta that I'm looking at. There's other pieces that we'll talk about, but that's the most solid piece. Like there's a lot of decent options from Denver in terms of their rookie wide receivers, running backs, or rookie wide receivers and quarterbacks mainly, running back options there. But for Atlanta, it's really just, they haven't said anything about a depth chart. They haven't said anything about even the players that are going to be suiting up for this game. So that's not great for us, right? Maybe that'll come out a little bit later. That's something that I urge you guys to all check out. But yeah, Benkert is the place at Atlanta that I'm starting with and having a lot of interest in. Now, a couple other things to point out here is that they said that they're going to be going with, since Tevin Coleman is now gone, Devontae Freeman's not going to play in this game, Devonta Freeman. They said that they're going to try, Dan Quinn said, a running back by committee for the second job. I don't know if that's just for the preseason. It makes no sense in the regular season to have a starter, and then your backups, I guess, are just being filtered through with 2 or 3 guys. Maybe that makes some sense. But I do have a lot of interest in, 1, Brian Hill, and 2, Kenyon Barner. Kenyon Barner, when he was with the Eagles, played really, really well. Sort of a gadget-type player. He can catch the ball. He's very elusive. I have a lot of interest in him today because I think that this is somebody in the second or third quarter can see a lot of run, can see 3 or 4 receptions out of the backfield, as well as some rushing opportunities. Brian Hill, we saw at the end of last year playing really well. He had like 16 carries for 100 yards or so to end out that season. So yeah, I think Brian Hill, Kenyon Barner, if they're going to actually be trying to have sort of this behind Devontae Freeman's sort of a rotational backup, I think you're going to see a lot of running backs today from Atlanta, or tomorrow I should say, from Atlanta. I don't think Ito Smith gets as much run because he's one of these first guys off the bench, first guys to come into the game, first guys to leave the game. But I really do like Brian Hill. I really do like Kenyon Barner. I think Barner is a very interesting play because he is so elusive. And when you have rookie quarterbacks or younger quarterbacks, only been in the league for a year or so, like Benkert, you're going to see a lot of passes to the tight end, a lot of passes to the running back, design plays like that. Obviously, they want to see them push the ball down the field, but they also don't want them to only be pushing the ball down the field. So, yeah, Barner, very interesting to me. Brian Hill, very interesting to me. And Benkert, very interesting to me, all from this Atlanta side. Just finishing it up, the O-line. So Atlanta's biggest problem was Matt Ryan just being sacked like the most in the league last year. The O-line, the rookies, it has not yet been said if they're going to be playing. If they are going to be playing for the first quarter or so, give Benkert even more of a bump. He should get even more protection. 2 rookies drafted high in the draft, and that's going to help a rookie quarterback, obviously. So also the running backs, though, as well. So that's not something else to keep an eye on. The main things for Atlanta right now is figuring out their defense, their pass rush. It was terrible last year. Defending running backs out of the backfield was terrible last year for them. And then also figuring out their offensive line. That is what they're looking at. They're not looking at offensive weapons because they have offensive weapons in Julio, Freeman, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, Hooper to an extent. This is really a look at defense for them, whereas Denver's a complete opposite. It's for us fantasy folks. It's a look at their offense, their quarterbacks, their wide receivers. Both of those positions are very young. Both of them are very have a lot of potential, and that's what they want to see in this game. So that's where I'm at right now on Atlanta. The other thing for Atlanta is you can also look at the tight ends. I'm not looking too much at wide receivers. The only thing that I would look at for wide receivers for Atlanta is one player, and it's this man right here, Gage. So I want to look at Russell Gage just a little bit potentially, only because Russell Gage has been working out day in and day out with Julio Jones in practice. Julio Jones has kind of taken Russell Gage, from the reports I'm reading, under his wing. So if there's one player out of all these wide receivers to stand out, because none of them are really getting any type of coverage, if there's one player to stand out who potentially can go out there and see a good amount of snaps in this and be productive with them, is Russell Gage. If you've been spending the last month or so with Julio Jones in practice every single day, helping learning running routes from him, that bodes well for you. I'm sure Julio Jones has some sort of say in not in who's going to be starting, but coach, this kid's looking good, something like that. Look, we're trying to build narratives here. I think Russell Gage, if there's a wide receiver from Atlanta I'd go to, it'd be the guy who's been sort of the guy taken under the wing of Julio Jones, right? So Russell Gage, that's another person that stands out to me for the preseason. Outside of that, no wide receivers I'm really looking at. I think I'd rather target wide receivers on Denver. That's where 2 to 3 of them are more electric, in my opinion, and are fighting more for a spot because the depth is so short there. The depth at wide receiver for Atlanta is kind of already in place. Justin Hardy's a decent play. Shouldn't see that much time, but Justin Hardy would be, again, sort of like an Ito Smith, the first guy on the field, the first guy off the field, because he is not as valuable as his starters, but still valuable as a rotational piece at wide receiver. And then I think you can get to a Luke Stocker. Luke Stocker is the backup tight end for Austin Hooper. I don't imagine Hooper's out there if he even starts at all. But like I said earlier, the tight ends are interesting here. I think they're overpriced. I would never pay $7,600 in the regular season for a tight end, but I think they're interesting here. Same thing with Paulson. These 2 players, it seems like they just acquired these Seattle tight ends. These 2 players are just guys who can be security blankets, get 4 or 5 targets. The issue is they can catch 4 balls for 20 yards and nothing, and they're sitting there with 6 points at $7,600. So I don't think they're that optimal, but I do think they'll see opportunity. So just to recap quickly, I have sort of listed down players that I'm interested in here today. Let me scoot on over there. Drew Lock and Kirk Burkhardt. We already talked about the 2 quarterbacks that I have the most interest in, the young guys that have sort of seen the investment from these teams. Atlanta has been molding him for 13 months behind Ryan, and then Lock was taken by to be the quarterback of the future for Denver. Devontae Booker, the running back for Denver, pass-catching guy who is going to face this Atlanta team that has made improvements on defense, or at least in theory they have, so maybe that helps with the passing to the running back out of the backfield woes, but I still do think Booker is a guy who should see around 10 carries or 10 opportunities today combined, and he's a guy who's very good, who will be facing below-average NFL defenders. Fred Brown, Kelvin McKnight, and Trinity Benson. McKnight and Benson are the rookies out there who've been turning heads in training camp. Fred Brown, though, is the guy who was listed ahead of them on the unofficial but official, I guess you can say, depth chart for the preseason. I like all three of those wide receivers as options for this game. Brian Hill and then Kenyon Barner. They said there's going to be some sort of running back by committee in Atlanta as for the second job. Like Freeman is the number one, and then with no Tevin Coleman, they're trying to work all their options. I think Ito Smith is not going to get a lot of run in this game. I think Kenyon Barner is a great play. I think he's a very gadgety type play as long as he's suiting up, which it seems like he is. And then Brian Hill, a guy who played really well to end last year, 16 carries for over 100 yards. A guy who I think is definitely going to be in the mix for sort of that backup job, that secondary rotational backup job, whatever they want to call it out there. So those are two running backs from Atlanta I target. I think Atlanta is going to give running backs a lot of opportunities to sort of see what they have behind Freeman. And then you have Russell Gage, who's the wide receiver who's been working out with Julio a lot. Look, there's not much out there. Justin Hardy, again, sort of a guy who'll be the first one on and first one off because he is somewhat valuable to this team as being a top 4 wide receiver right now. But yeah, Russell Gage has a lot of standouts. He was graded well in his draft, and now he's working with Julio for the past month. Give me Russell Gage as the interesting wide receiver. And then just tight ends from both teams. Huerman, someone interesting listing right now for the unofficial depth chart is the tight end number 1. Tight ends usually stay on the field a little bit more in the preseason, especially when your name's not like a Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, all those types. They're not as valuable to your team. And then Luke Stocker or Paulson from the tight ends from Atlanta. I'm not as interested in tight ends only because of the price point. I think they don't have as much upside, but they will be security blankets for these younger quarterbacks, and they will have some red zone targets most likely. So that's it. What do we give you? We gave you 10 interests. Just gave you 10 early interests with some information. Hopefully this video helps. I'm very excited for the NFL. Once again, check out fantasybrosshop.com. I'll link it up down below in the description. Check out, and for free, just sign up for the NFL course. If you're interested at all in learning more about DFS, I'm giving everything about it. I'm showing you how to build my stat sheets. I'm showing you my takes on ownership, how I go about looking at contest selection for this year, how I'm going about my cash games and tournament builds, whatever it might be. Every single thing's in there, stacking. So you can get that down below. It's free to sign up, and then I will send you a notification when it's done. Follow me on Twitter for more updates at SalVetcherDFS, and if you could hit that red subscribe button, it helps me out a ton. Thank you all so much. My name's Sal. Best of luck today or tomorrow, whenever you're playing fantasy. Peace out, gang.